Thank you to our listening public. We're back.
And we're back.
Kind of feel like a radio announcer sometimes. Okay. All right, Jim.
All right.
Take care.
Good evening, board chair, board members, Superintendent Stallo. This evening, we're here to give a summary of Strategic Direction 2B, which mostly deals with HR processes. With me tonight is Emily Herman, Assistant Director of Human Resources. We thought we better have her show up so you know where the Friday emails come from and you can put a face with a name, right? No, she's got a lot of good stuff and she'll be sharing it with you as well. So just for the folks that are at home, Strategic Direction 2 reads, continue fiscal accountability through operational excellence and the alignment of human, financial, and physical resources to district goals. Basically what that means for us and our part of that, the priority work that we are working on was a comprehensive plan would be created and implemented for personnel processes with individual focused service and support for all employees to include recruitment and retention, process and procedural documentation, educational campaigns on personnel processes, benefits and resources, and efficient alignment of staffing processes with student needs. I think you'll see after we're done with this and Dr. Stallo does next year's work, we've shortened that. So that's one good thing that came out of this. Little did we know when we started creating this and it was all passed, even though COVID was starting, the amount of practice we were going to get in all of this as the year went on, because we got a ton of it. Most of it deals with HR processes, but we had a lot of help in a lot of these, whether it was communication or technology, teaching and learning as we went through this. But I just have to give a little bit of a shout out to my staff, a small staff that did an amazing amount of work. And that's from, if you think back the last 2 years from staffing for the new Hamilton Ridge School, which we did like 3 staffings in 1 year, to then running right into COVID. So just a ton of work by a lot of people. So I just wanted to recognize them for that. A little bit of background on how we came to this. One of the things that we believe strongly in is auditing everything that we do, and we started with an audit of all of our processes and procedures and gave a red, green, yellow to each one of those things in order to prioritize that. Along with that, a lot of practice at staffing and some different staffing processes as well that we went through, scrutinizing the staffing maybe a little bit more. And then COVID happened and we had all the adjustments related to that as well. And all the changes that occurred along with that as far as the HR deadlines, governor's orders, MDE interpretation, MDH, all of those things that happened, we had to basically start brand new with personnel processes and create another one on top of what we normally would do. So that's the background on all the things that we had been working on and got us to thinking about what can we fix, what can we change, what can we make better. And all of this drove us to through this work and to that work. So that's how the priorities were somewhat set. So as far as the accomplishments related to that priority work, I just got to take a minute just to add a little bit more on there to some perspective. I would say, although it was a lot of work, I think we did more than just thrive. I think more than survive, I think we thrived. And although my staff might say it was extremely stressful and they're tired, I think we learned a lot about how to be agile and responsive and be able to change things quickly and put in new processes, not in months, but in a day or two, and gin them up and get them going. So that's a lot when you think that in a normal year, for instance, we might have 30 or 40 leaves. Not only did we have the 30 or 40 regular leaves, but had 150 leaves and accommodation requests, right? So you're adding all that on top of that. So it really helped us figure out how to become more effective and efficient in our processes because we just had to. And it worked. And we had a lot of help with that, whether that was Joe as COVID or again, technology. A lot of people helped us out. So, and then I would just throw one more thing on there to add a little bit more perspective. and it was a negotiating year for everybody but the teachers. So we also finalized about 60 employment agreements as well. So that really drove our learning and helped us become, I think, much better than we were pre-COVID. So I don't put that as a list as a badge of honor, although I would say that I have to compliment my staff again. They're amazing. But I think what it did is drove us to those efficiency processes as we went through all of this. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily to talk a little bit about some of the HR responses to these priority works.
Board members and Superintendent Stallo, thank you for your time this evening. So when Jim and I were divvying up the slides, I said, I'll take the accomplishments. I'm a good team member like that. So as Jim alluded to, some of the major accomplishments that the HR team established this year, I'm sorry, I'm not used to taking this off, was really centering around COVID-19 for obvious reasons. As he mentioned, a lot of things are changing at a very quick pace, not just for us, but for all of our staff. And so way back in April, we had a meeting and kind of said, we need one spot that we can direct our staff to. Keep them updated on what the changes are so they don't have to go to multiple different locations or emails constantly to try to figure that out. So we started the staff resources during COVID-19 document and kept updated versions. Over the course of the year, thanks to all of the changes and additional resources that were passed by the federal and state government, there were 30 updates to that document, which just speaks to the volume of updates and resources that were available to staff, which was, yes, it was a lot of work, but great news for the staff as well. To start the year, we really just needed to know who was able to come back and who needed our support on either an accommodation or a leave. So we started with the return to work checklist and survey to determine who needed a leave or a possible accommodation. From there, as Jim mentioned, we processed 150 leave and accommodation requests for the school year. With the support of all of our administrators in the buildings and in our departments, we couldn't have done that without them. We also, throughout the year, supported a staff over 300 either confirmed exposures that they needed a leave or an accommodation for, or a confirmed case that they had themselves. With that was part of the COVID leave options, the FFCRA for short, that they had available to them through December 31st that we implemented, and educating them on how to utilize that. I'm sure you guys are very well aware the federal government likes to make things complicated and not use terminology that we all would use. So there were 6 options. One of them didn't even exist, so there's technically only 5, but helped them through that process as we quickly learned it and implemented it, and as Jim said, in 2 days' time for that one. With all of this, our heads were spinning, so we decided also to try to make an update that would be regular and consistent for our staff. So we decided to move forward with a weekly email that staff would know was coming, where to go to, had consistent links in it. So again, hopefully staff weren't hunting down information. They had it at their fingertips, and they knew that we were available as a resource to them. And the last major thing we did with COVID-19 is when the incident command team was formed, we got together with Joe Kabushek and Chris Lynn and decided what data do we need from HR to make some decisions. So then we utilized a weekly data report from HR to gather and present to the incident command team. Other things happened this last year besides COVID-19. Shocking, I know, but they did. We had a lot of recruitment and retention efforts that we're really proud of. We were able to partner with the communications team and department leads to create some really fun recruitment campaigns. As mentioned later in the slide, after we would do recruitment campaigns, whether it was Chelsea and Christy helping with social media campaigns or in the HR Weekly newsletter or principal updates, we always saw uptick in our applicants for those positions. So it was very helpful to have all of their support. We had it in our weekly updates, the stall news, social media posts, ads in the local newspaper, really try to get out to multiple resources to increase our applicants to positions, and we did see some success in that in a time that was very trying to hire. So we did have very difficult positions to fill, and it took time to fill a lot of positions, but we feel that those recruitment efforts were successful. In addition to that, We're starting development with Pelsby and the Coalition of Teachers of Color to create a portfolio cohort, and we're being a partner in that process. We're very excited about that. So hopefully, moving forward with that meeting next month to kind of finalize some details around that and support the retention of our teachers who are currently on a Tier 1 licensure to help them get a Tier 3 so they can move forward in the tiered process and get to Tier 3 level. We also completed and participated in a teacher coalition retention cohort through the Equity Alliance that was specific to HR professionals. It was absolutely amazing and gave us a network of about 40 different districts that we can reach out to for advice and help and just kind of somebody to listen to when we have a problem. And that was a really great professional development, and we look forward to participating in more of those. Our HR team is absolutely phenomenal, and they've been phenomenal way before I've been here. And they already had a very extensive onboarding process for all of our new staff. And this year they did an amazing job flipping on a dime and creating a virtual option for that to keep the integrity and the extensive information available to all of our staff. And it was really great to see them move that to a virtual option for our new staff that came on board this year. Another major goal of ours, and again, this is a continuing goal, is helping our staff become more knowledgeable on the resources they have for their insurance, but also the role that they play. And we have really great, extensive plans that for our health and dental, and helping them know the resources they have available to them and how they can actively participate in keeping the plans affordable. So our insurance committee summaries have been included in our weekly updates. With that, we are trying to drop in some educational benefit terms so people can learn more about what it means to have a deductible versus a copay versus out-of-pocket max, different things along those lines. Our insurance consultant and One Digital are absolutely amazing, and they help create some educational videos, again, with not only some insurance terms, but also really helping to define what it means to be self-funded and how we can all play an active role in that. And as well as an enrollment guide. We were very happy that there are over 200 views, and that does not count me clicking on it multiple different times to update that. They took that out, which I was disappointed in. But over 200 unique views all the way through for having almost about 800 staff that are eligible for medical benefits. I thought that was really a really great percentage, and we were very excited about that, and that's a lot of kudos to One Digital. We continued our focus on the employee assistance plan. That, hopefully for everybody's knowledge, is a plan that provides a lot of resources online, but also 6 free visits for our employees and their family members. A really great resource, and a wide list that I won't go into it, but ranging from legal assistance to work-life balance to anxiety to parenting concerns, a whole gamut, and they have a really long list of COVID-19 resources. So really focused on continuing that education of availability to our staff. We did have an educational roadshow planned. COVID kind of canceled that ability, but we wanted to include that on this slide because we are still committed to that. And then with that, we did create a subcommittee in our insurance committee to focus on our educational efforts. And we kicked that off this year. We've had a couple meetings. We're expanding our efforts around that, and excited to see where that work leads us next year as well. And then as Jim mentioned in the intro, we've done a few staffing processes in the last 12 months and gotten really efficient at it. With each model change, there was changes to our staffing. And again, that wouldn't have been possible without our partnership and collaboration with our principals and department leads to make that possible. We closely tracked, as part of the incident command data I referred to earlier, our open positions. And as you can see, there was a couple of spikes that were a little concerning. But you can see then it spiked back down, and something we kept a really close eye on. We implemented and expanded our centralized hiring process for all of our district level positions, and felt that was very successful in creating a common tool and an analysis tool for hiring. And then lastly, and equally important as all of them, our substitutes are critical and vital to our daily operations, and so our partnership with Teachers on Call was critical to us as well. Our partnership with our liaison, we kept up to date with to let them know what we were starting in model changes, when we were having changes, making sure they had all the same resources that our staff did so they knew what our protocols would be coming in, what expectations there were, what safety measures we were taking to help them feel comfortable. Whenever we could, we included them on the resources that were available to the district because we can't function without them, and that partnership was very vital to us. As you can see, that was another incident command data that we very closely tracked. Hard to see on the slide, but the blue is the sub request, the orange is the subs filled. So we are closely tracking that to see where that was going. And that's it.
Oops. That's all right.
All right. So as far as impact, like I've already spoke to the first one, it really has helped us become more effective and efficient in implementing things. And I think we'll be able to, excuse me, continue that as we move forward. Even without COVID, I think we have a new model here on how we go about doing business. I also think that through this process and the practice we've gotten with staffing, we can do this more on the fly and be more efficient with the resources given without getting as much efficiency out of staffing as we can, and I mean numbers-wise, without having to raise class sizes initially. I mean, that's really the goal, is to maximize that. Recruiting continues and always will be an effort that we have, particularly looking for both teachers, paras, everybody in the district, for employees who look like our kids and would represent our kids as well. And so those efforts will continue as well, although it's been impacted. One of the things that I do think is important that we stress all the time is the ability to get answers to people as quickly as we can and be responsive to them. And you can't see it real well, but the one on the bottom right-hand corner, it's about 90-some% were positive, and HR provides timely and accurate customer service. So through all of this, to have that kind of a percentage, I'm really proud of my staff for that. And so, I took your thunder, didn't I? Last two, and I just ran right over her. Sorry about that. But the teacher, the last one is one we're very excited about, and Emily's taken the lead on that in working with the CTOC and Pelsby on that initiative, and I think it's something to really look forward to. We are the only district in the state of Minnesota in this type of arrangement, in this partnership, so we have a real opportunity here. So our focus, we did a lot, and a lot went really well, but what it also did is sharpened on what things we can do much better at. One of the things through all of this, whether it was the contract negotiations, all of the agreements we settled, and all the things that happened with COVID as people became doing different things than they normally did, it really brought out for us the need to look at our whole job description and classification process and what we currently have. It's one of those that job descriptions in districts have a tendency to be like a cake, and you just keep adding layers on, and you don't ever go back down to the cake, right? And I think it's time that we do that, because we noticed as we went through this process just some comparisons that didn't make sense, some job descriptions that were very out of date, and that really starts everything for us, is that job description process. So that's one that we're really going to focus on, that does definitely need some work. We're going to continue to expand those onboarding efforts. We think there's a lot to do there yet. We We're able to do it virtually, but I think we can do all of that way better and have a more coordinated effort within the district on onboarding people. That education around the benefits needs to continue. When some of us started in this business a long time ago, the benefits were sort of a throwaway. Yeah, go ahead. We'll pay for that. We'll pay for that. That has changed drastically, and it's a significant portion of what the district spends money on. So we want to continue to educate people on how to be wise consumers of that benefit. It also came out that as we went through this year, another thing we need to look at is really some evaluation processes and tools for our non-certified staff and provide some consistency. Another thing that we're going to work on. And then I've already spoke to the recruit, hire, and retain more diverse staff, including possibly some grow your own initiatives that we might be able to enhance or do sometime down the road. So that's really some of the priorities that came out of not only what we saw, but also some stakeholders, other people who gave us input administratively or whatever, said these are some things that I think we need to continue to work on, and we agree with that. So that's it.
Okay. Any questions, comments?
I would just like to say that, anecdotally around the district and what I'm exposed to, I just hear a lot of positive things about the work you're doing, and I really appreciate it. It's fun to hear about what you've accomplished, but it's actually really fun to hear about what you're looking to accomplish, and that's exciting work. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'd just like to echo that. I mean, we've got two systems thinkers here who have a small and mighty team that, again, this doesn't even cover what has been on their plates in the last year and a half. It truly has been remarkable. They are process-oriented, they are data-driven, they value processes, they're responsive, and they value collaboration and the human spirit. And they have absolutely helped establish a culture and a vision that I can't wait to see where this team continues to help us go. Truly amazing work.
And I'll just echo that. I know Terry wanted to jump in there.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I just with my, with being with Incident Command, and I just know what we've gone through as an organization has really, we've looked to you guys a lot for how our culture, our status of our employees, you've had to do things that were probably never asked of you before. And so I just want to give you our heartfelt gratitude for that. And it looks like you have a big task list ahead that will be excited that you want to do it after this last year and a half, but some really great work coming forward. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Are those Friday newsletters going to continue? Oh, God, I look forward to those every week.
No one's asked for her autograph yet, but there's some real fans.
We'll line up after. Yeah.
I don't know, they call me email lady as a real fan. Just to be clear, we might pause them a little bit over the summer, but.
Yeah. That's right. You can take a break. All right, thank you. Okay. District goal recommendations. Is that what we're on?
Yes, excellent. Thank you all very much. Just wanted to remind you all that each year, and you have seen and got to review all of our end of the year report on our priority work. So the process that we go through as a team is, as we close the year, we come back together and we say, okay, what of this remains? Is there anything that's operational? And what do we change to continue to focus our continuous improvement efforts? So again, the purpose of identifying the goals specifically under each strategic direction is to assure a common focus of our priorities and an alignment of our time from the district to buildings to departments, programs, classrooms, and students. So really, how are we aligning all of those arrows around really focused work? I think it's really important for me to note that the priority work statements and the goals that we have, they're never really meant to be one-year goals. We use the scorecard to track the metrics that we've deemed important, and that's always an evolution as well. But really, when it gets to the point of being a priority result statement, it really is usually about creating a system, and that takes some time to create the system. HR just provided an example of that. We implement a system, we monitor the system, and then at some point, it just becomes the way we do things and operational and a part of who we are, and then it no longer needs to be priority work. I always say that when we can ask any, regardless of what the priority work is, when we can ask any employee about it and they can give us consistent answers about how we do something, we know we've operationalized it in a way that it can be taken off the list. Teams are established in each area to work and to collaborate on this, and again, it just depends on where is that priority work. If it's a new year of organizing something, we really try to take it through a plan, do, study, act. But then you often will see the first year we may have said that we were creating a comprehensive district system. The next year, then after it's been created, we implement. The next year it might be we monitor. So I just want to be really clear on that, because you'll see some things, and you saw some things on this paper that are continuation. And that's not because we didn't do heavy lifting. We didn't do large amounts of work in each of those areas. Again, you just saw an example from HR. The work's not done. They've identified things that they've done, and they've identified additional work that needs to continue. And that's just an important part of what we do. So I just want to remind you again, these 6 strategic directions sit on the right side of that visual that you've seen hundreds of times of our strategic plan. And again, they are the goals that guide our educational programming and our decision making. And what we've had to identify is we say, okay, what is that focused work that needs to happen in order for that strategic direction to grow and become stronger, in order for the mission of our district to come to life for each student. Also, wanted to remind you that this current year, though we've been working with Reimagine Minnesota since the very beginning of that 5 years ago, this year we also aligned the 6 strategies in Reimagine Minnesota with our priority work. So that's the blue areas that you've seen. I think that's a continued place that we can deepen our work. I know as we looked at that 6th strategic direction about stakeholder engagement, we really want to review and look at what community bridges and what we can continue to learn from that. So that's something that we're doing as well. And again, that's work that is work that's being done in the AMSD districts and other districts across the state. So as we look at this very briefly, you'll see that under strategic direction number 1, that instructional framework, the Laker Learning Compass, we're maintaining that language. The recommendation from the team is that we maintain the language as it was this year. And again, I want to be really, really clear. That doesn't mean that we didn't do mounds of work. The advancement of personalized learning, the way that our teaching and learning team adjusted and changed and got us ready for 3 different learning models and pivoting on the second and changing everything from pacing guides to the way we do assessment to the way we work with kids has just been phenomenal. Moving forward, we're going to continue to align PD to the Laker Learning Compass. We're creating really a long-term plan for the advancement of personalized learning and building that into SCIP plans. Looking at creating a student learner profile, and then continuing to look at the promising practices. And we know our learning teams, when teachers can learn from one another, that really is when their practice gets improved. The second bullet, the comprehensive E12 MTSS, multi-system of supports framework for academic and social emotional learning, is also staying similar or the same, actually, I think, as the year prior. Again, this was a multi-year plan that's been developed. If you remember, we worked with the Carey Institute to really give us those recommendations, and it was a massive, massive movement. Jeff Holmberg has been leading an MTSS leadership team all year through the pandemic, never paused for a second on this work, and are continuing to build a better system. And again, have strong action steps already identified and recommendations for moving forward. The district's E12 Educational Equity and Excellence Plan to close achievement gaps will continue to be focused. That, again, stays very much, wording of that stays the same. The additional recommendations and action plans, as you know, we'll be hiring a Director of Educational Equity and Inclusion, and we'll have specific goals in the department continuous improvement plans as well as our SCIPs. We'll continue to provide PD and really looking at our inclusive curriculum through an equity lens as we go through reviews, continuing to look at those Reimagine Minnesota strategies, and then finding ways to engage our families. Under the strategic direction number 2, again, keeping that first comprehensive long-range planning model intact, continuing to look at the tools that are available for us as we look, and we saw through the enrollment process this year that Julie kept bringing additional tools to us to use to look at that. We know that a huge part of the recommendations and action plans, should the board determine to go out for a tech levy, will be around that work, as well as she shared this evening, the continued tracking of all the federal dollars and figuring out what that means to our budget moving forward. You just heard from HR, and the actual priority result that you have in front of you is shortened in terms of words, and that's because a lot of the words that were in this year's are moving into the action plans. Under strategic direction number 3, with expanding innovation to improve the learner experience, we did look at this, and what we're doing is developing a plan to capture the lessons learned through the pandemic and create a system to monitor, promote, and oversee innovation to capture all we are doing and to integrate and expand innovation. Really looking at, and we've been collecting this in a lot of different ways, and especially the group that's working on some flexible learning for next year, really trying to continue and say, how do we maintain some of the flexibility that we've had this year as we continue to help students learn at high levels. We will be collecting data, already have, on those lessons learned, and work with those as we look at instruction for increased academic and SEL outcomes. Looking at staffing options at the building to see how innovative we can go, and continuing to encourage staff to work on their strength areas. You know, when you are a district that believes in systems thinking, sometimes then it's hard to also have that space for innovation. And I think it's really important moving forward that we have parameters and we have goals, and we allow staff flexibility to achieve those. E-STEM has been something that we have continued to come back to say again, if we asked 5 people across the district, what is E-STEM and what does it mean in this district, I don't think we'd yet have consistent responses. So we're continuing, the team that has looked at this, what they have created for their priority work statement is a comprehensive E-STEM plan to ensure common understanding of our E-STEM focus will be created to continue to provide effective sustainability in environmental education, science, technology, engineering, and math. And they've got several ideas and action steps with the completion of the buildings and ground projects to really look at how do we rebuild E-STEM days into our work, and make sure that we have broader representatives of stakeholders, creating and documenting common understanding of E-STEM, and really highlighting the work that's being done in each of the areas. One of the ideas that came forward is to have that be a focus for Laker Pride next year. So I think that'd be a really great idea. New science standards are going to give us an opportunity to keep looking at interdisciplinary work. Looking at maintaining E-STEM as a skip goal as well, and then continuing to expand. We've got some grant opportunities for our school gardens that we're looking at. In strategic direction number 5, again, maintaining that system of support for social and emotional learning. Again, this was the new strategic direction from a few years ago, and that's broken into both parts, which are remaining fairly consistent with the social emotional learning, and then the second part that you heard from, I think, about a month ago, with our district emergency plan and maintaining and deepening that work. And then finally, as we look at strategic direction number 6, we really have been focusing for the last 5 years on the surveys and using the surveys to continue to improve, as well as the focus group. So we're taking a step further. We believe that that is operational at this time, that is just part of what we do in our natural cycle of continuous improvement. So we have a comprehensive stakeholder engagement plan will be created using best practices to more deeply engage with all stakeholder groups. And that's going to be something where our leaders are going to have to do some study to say, what's this really mean? What's it mean then to a building and a department? Hearing again some of the things that we heard from HR about especially employee stakeholder or input, but then looking at schools and what it means around that work as well. So with that, I just wanted to share with you where we are right now and plan to bring this forward as a final draft to you in June for approval, and we'll continue to work on some really heavy lifting of really important work.
Okay. Is there any questions on any of the work?
I do.
Mary, yep.
I think it's 3 or 4 years in a row now about the integration of STEM and E-STEM. Do we have any more meat that can go into that? I know I've asked that repeatedly, and it seems like we've had like the same thing. And granted, last year doesn't count.
Last year counts a lot. Actually, last year counts a lot, especially around that specific priority work, and I think you would have seen that in the report. The amount of work that our principals and leaders did around outdoor learning was absolutely unbelievable this year during a pandemic. So this year counts a lot, actually. I think, and that was an area, Mary, that group has, and I don't want to say struggled, they've just really worked to say, how do we really come together? You know, I don't know that there's yet common, consistent understanding that what does it mean to be an E-STEM district? Like, we can all have a lot of different examples. We can look at our curriculum, we can look at E-STEM days, we can look at a lot of those things. But I think that's exactly what they keep looking at is, how do we build something so that every new employee and every student and every parent would say, this is E-STEM here in Prior Lake Savage Area Schools. It's interesting because it like seems like that shouldn't be hard to do, but I think there's different history and different buildings with different staff. So we don't want to like change or take away the great work that folks are doing, and we know we can't always replicate it in all of our buildings. But that's exactly what this group still wants to go after and try to figure out. And it looks really different at the early learning grades and elementary than when you get into middle school and high school. So I think part of, heard just some great ideas like, should we be having an environmental engineering pathway? So I think it's just getting, you're right, what is the meat and the specific goals that then change into program changes or course changes or some of those things.
Yeah, I think my frustration was more or less like, I think when it first appeared, I want to say almost 4 years ago, that I remember it, and I remember saying, okay, we were going to develop a plan, milestone, what is the plan? Because there was a lot of confusion back then. There was a lot of confusion between the different elementary schools and how they were implementing it. There was confusion when, with the naturalist and does that apply? And then with the new science standards. And I'm just wondering if there's going to be even a, when you start doing that, you want to develop milestones and plans, et cetera, just to have a stake in the ground from which to argue against or discuss. Yeah. And that's just, that one's been really frustrating to me. It sounds like it's been frustrating to you too. I just wonder if there's...
I don't know if frustrating is the word. We really leaned into, I know a couple of years ago, really leaned into the pillars. So much of that strategic direction, and before me even, was really about the Green Ribbon Award. And so really, the last couple of years, we've leaned back into what those pillars were of the Green Ribbon Award. And again, amazing work that's been done in every single site aligned to this, with recycling, with a lot of different things. And maybe it's okay that it's not the exact same in every site, but to your point, what are some of those metrics we're looking for, and how do we, again, so that we can all speak to, here's what it means for us being in E-STEM. So we've got a team around it, and they're going to keep doing great work. And I think that's part of the innovative piece too, right, is to say, how do we keep deepening our identity as an E-STEM district and really work on that STEM part as well more.
All right.
I would say that's where some of the innovation has been coming in too, that where we may say there's not a formalized plan, just being in the buildings this past year under all the different learning environments and everything from early childhood through high school and seeing the teachers, and now we're building momentum because we have the parent organizations, the PTOs are coming together and saying, let's raise funds for extra seating for outside. Let's buy wagons with little seats so they can pull their learning materials out and do their studies outside. And so I want to acknowledge that, and I love the idea of bringing the common understanding together. But with that innovation allowed in there, this was a powerful year to watch the benefits of being an E-STEM district, so.
Well, on Thursday, Amy and I were at the middle school and the H2O project. We got a chance to see that, which was just amazing in terms of curricular E-STEM work. Again, raining that day when I went over to Jeffers Pond, but classrooms were outside, so it's an interesting one because it's maybe not as quantifiable as we'd want. Like, we can quantify, and we set building goals around recycling goals, right? That's quantifiable. Energy efficiencies, that's quantifiable. Staff saying that they're implementing E-STEM into their curriculum, we can quantify that. But some of those innovations, I think you're right, it's just teachers who have some projects or kids that have some passions that are bringing it to life. So, yep, we got some work to do. We'll figure out how to continue to do that really well.
Okay, so that'll come forward at the next board meeting.
Yeah.
All right, board governance policy. We have some policies, I think, tonight. Mr. Holmberg?
Good evening, Chair Ruel, members of the board, Dr. Stallo. I have a few policies for you this evening to introduce. If you'd like, I can just kind of give a broad overview of the first ones.
Sure.
Okay. Policy 413 on harassment and violence for employee. This one is coming a little bit out of order because it is a companion policy to 522, Title IX, Sex Non-Discrimination, and Policy 528, Student Familial and Marital Status Non-Discrimination. So we're bringing that together because they are all interrelated in that realm. So policy 5, so that's why you see that there. There really are not that many revisions according as presently noted. 502.
Jeff?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
So, well,
Oh, should we do them at the questions at the end?
yeah, let's wait till the end. Let's do them, go through them.
Okay. Policy 502, search of student lockers, desks, minor revisions to that one. This was also reviewed by our legal. Policy 522, Title IX, Sex Non-Discrimination Policy, Grievance Procedure and Process. This is a policy that has gone through some considerable revisions. Our legal went through that, and you'll note when you compare our current policy and what's been had the strike through, there are some changes. So this was one policy that has gone through quite a transition process there too. I do want to point out we do have a revision that I will be making at the next board meeting relative to role and responsibility into this policy. Okay. Policy 528, again, it's a companion policy to 522. One thing I will note there too, similarly, there is a revision to a role and responsibility that will be changed in this policy as well. Policy 529, notice of violent behavior. There are some updates to this policy as well. Student surveys, 520. We actually worked through this policy about 1 to 2 years ago, and so there are no revisions, and I think more specifically how we went through this policy a couple years ago was just in order with our process and procedures of the surveys that we've been doing with students, and we had to pay particular attention. As you noticed this evening, a lot of policies where we're engaging with students and stakeholders, and one of the things is with student surveys giving the option for them to opt out of taking the survey. Policy 606, and that will lead us up to then the next sequence of policies, which I presented the last time. But selection and review of learning resources, there are some minor revisions in this policy as well.
Okay, let's take questions. So I was gonna ask one first. So the ones that are reviewed by legal counsel, I mean, are these MSBA reviewed and then legal counsel, or is this just our legal looking at it, or?
So it's our legal looking at it in conjunction with MSBA.
Okay,
And when our legal looks at it, they're looking at it from the lens of what's going to protect us as a district and be in our best interest.
so for the most part, are they fairly similar to what MSBA is having?
Correct.
They are, okay.
Correct.
Okay. That was my question. Michael, did you have one?
You know, I can actually address it when we go over the other ones, because
The
it's
other ones?
related, as you could
Yes.
probably figure it out.
Okay. Anyone else have questions on these? Mary?
Jeff, I understand the, legal counsel and the MSBA and the policy, but I'm always worried if we ever contradict with statute or a federal requirement or anything like that, and making sure that we put language in there that says, even if we put this in here, if it somehow or another, the definitions or anything like that isn't as thorough or contradicts, that we recognize that the sitting law would take precedence. And that we're, and then make sure that if we're doing something above and beyond what we're required to do from a statutory or regulatory standpoint, that we point that out, especially when it comes to the physical harm or the sexual harassment or discrimination, just to make sure, again, I'm sure legal counsel says the same thing. It just concerns me when I see all the stuff rewritten that are also our legally defined terms.
Yeah. One of the things with when you're talking about statute and our conversations, with my conversations with legal counsel, and I believe I've shared this with the board before, but statute always trumps local board policy. And same thing with federal laws. And so, whenever there's a conflict with that, or there's something that always will trump our district policy, so that, our stakeholders are covered, our students are covered, our staff are covered through the statutes and through the laws that we're all bound to.
Is that something that we should point out then, just to let people know who are reading these policies? And
That
then
wouldn't be the
also-
recommendation of our legal counsel.
Wouldn't be?
No.
Okay. Okay. Do we go above and beyond statute, which we're fully allowed to do within our own district?
Correct.
Is there places in here that we do go above and beyond that?
I think that really, in general, I think as a board, you always have that ability to have a conversation to say, is this something where we want to take this and apply it to specific components to our district? So, I think there have been examples of that in the past. I know shortly here, we'll be getting to another policy where, as a board, you have the ability to have that conversation. Yep.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to the next ones then. So these are the second reads? Go ahead. I mean,
The next group,
Oh,
I
sorry.
believe, is
Am I missing?
technically first read. We have the
We don't have any
presentation,
first
then the
reads.
first read. So.
What? Are they wrong in here?
No, under 5B, we just don't have any there,
Right.
right?
Oh, got it. 5C, yes,
Yeah, so
second
we're
read.
clear.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I was like,
Thanks
what?
for the correction
No,
of
there are
me,
none.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
The way it's stuck in there, I wasn't
Yeah, no, I
tracking, my
know.
apologies.
No problem.
So yes, these are second read of the policy. So I'll cover a couple, and then I will also reference to, as a board, I did send an email to all of you regarding the topic pertaining to policy 506.1 on bullying prohibition. And it also pertains to another policy which is not in the secondary review, but it does come together, and that's 506. But is in particular to your point, Mary, to going above and beyond statutorily, and as a board, having a conversation about, do we want to call out particular things that are important for the school district and the stakeholders in our school district? So, all of the others, I believe, are the same with the exception of the weighted grading policy, because that one has been updated. But I believe, if you'd like, we can delve into 506.2 and the particulars of the question that's come forward around some of the language components.
Do you mind if we look at 621? I mean, look at the weighted grade. Just let's look at
Yes.
the weighted grade, because I
Okay.
know that last line is the line that was added, right?
Correct.
With the effect for the graduating class of 20. So that was the language we wanted in there as it relates to when it was everyone good with that? Stipulating when it'll be in play. Okay. Seeing everyone okay with that? Okay.
Wait, what number was that? Because there's so many of them.
It's the last one. It's
Very last one, okay.
621.15C7.
Okay.
It's just when this factoring will take effect. The classes, incoming classes.
So we don't start them until the freshman year of, so the 2026 lets us go a full cycle?
Correct.
Who's in school right now?
It's actually like the incoming eighth graders.
Yeah, correct.
Eighth graders?
Yeah, I mean,
Current eighth graders, incoming ninth
Incoming
graders of
ninth
fall
graders.
2021.
Rising
Really
freshman.
screwed up. Yeah, okay.
but it's just to be reflective of that. Okay, so we're good there. Okay, let's go back to the one.
Okay, so in the bullying, I believe I sent you kind of a very long, lengthy email.
Yep.
In essence, it is regarding the topic of the Minnesota Human Rights Act, specifically gender expression and gender identity. In the Minnesota Human Rights Act, and the question from our legal is, the Minnesota Human Rights Act is intended to be a very fairly broad listing of all of the protected classes. And so it's their opinion that the definition and specifically the language covers gender identity and expression. The question that's come forward is, as a board, given the work that you've done with the equity resolution, is this something that as a board should you go a step further and include gender expression and identity as that may be, that people may not see themselves in that, in the light of Minnesota Human Rights Act. And so as a point, I will turn it over as a board for conversation about that. Again, our legal counsel is saying, you know, Minnesota Human Rights Act covers it. But as a board, you always have the prerogative to, you know, insert those things or have those conversations about including them in the policy.
Okay, and I'm looking for it. Can you identify exactly where it is in the policy, the wording?
It is in definition,
Okay,
section 2, letter D, number 3.
yep. Okay.
This may sound a little bit redundant considering it's a definition, but do we have a way to explain and define what gender expression is in addition to identity? Because this isn't for us necessarily, this is for our staff and students, and we need to be able to explain that. I don't have any problem with the wording, I'm just wondering if there was any, you know, concern about if it applies, how would we explain it?
Sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the question being posed is after sexual orientation, if it should be a comma, correct? And not including, we're taking out including, right? What would be the?
I think to say sexual orientation, including gender identity and expression, for those who do, I don't even want to use the wrong words, but it's not the same thing as sexual orientation. If your gender identity does not match what it says on your birth certificate, that has nothing to do with your sexual orientation, even if it's legally said that way. Your gender expression may be the way you dress or behave, right? And so since we went to such great lengths in that resolution, what I'm just asking is more than even defining is, should it be sexual orientation, comma, gender identity, comma, and gender expression? Again, how many people go through policies, but if someone in our district who's talking about this in their family or reads it, it would bother me that it looks as if we didn't understand the difference.
And just to, so within the resolution that we passed, the wording was?
Separated with commas. It was not including, so it was sexual and orientation,
They were
comma,
considered individual.
individual.
items.
And that came from
Yeah.
stakeholders as well.
Yeah.
And I know in legal, like, that term may say that, but like if you look up even lawsuits, they separate them out in lawsuits. If there's a gender identity lawsuit or something like that. More importantly, if you talk to people
Yes, right,
who want to be seen.
right.
That's a good question then. If it's discussed in a lawsuit, can we use the definition from there to make sure we're all on the same page? Because if something were to happen and somebody said, oh no, I qualify or I don't qualify or this is that, we have to be able to defend it. And I think I understand what it means, but I can't write it down either. I mean, I get it, but I can't really articulate it in writing to the point where it would be, if we're gonna go more defined from the statute, how would we then further define the word expression, I guess?
I don't know if we need to explain it in policy, if that's something we would look at down the road.
I'm asking that too. I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, we're setting a policy here that we want people to follow, and we want to be able to apply it. So, again, I have no problem with the language here and making it as broad as possible, but if it is ever challenged, we're going to have to explain it. So do we have, if you said it's in lawsuits, they had to, lawyers always go on and on and on with their definitions, so I'm sure there's something we can lift.
And I think maybe even I'm hearing a question of, and again, it's a question of the legal advice we got was defining was saying that a part of sexual orientation is sexual identity and gender identity and gender expression.
Yeah.
I hear the question being, we don't believe that is how it would be defined. And we believe it's more inclusive to set sexual orientation apart with the comma, gender expression, gender identity. So I think it's even saying, we're not sure that legal question or the legal definition that they have saying sexual orientation including is the right definition.
I guess I would suggest, Jeff, if you could inquire with legal, if making
did.
that change,
He did. He did.
striking it works, right? I mean, it's,
Yes, in the email, I put
Adding the
put
comma.
verbatim, the legal's perspective verbatim in the email. They said they do not believe the district needs to include that out like that because it is included in, but the district may go a step further to individually identify those. So,
The question basically is, do we want to go a step further or not?
I'd support that.
St. Paul and Minneapolis do, for example. I don't know if they define it, but I did check their policies. Some schools just pull the straight language, from the Human Rights Act, but some of the other districts have taken it further.
So I guess what are people supportive of?
I would support taking it a step further.
And separating them?
Yep.
Yep,
Yeah.
concur.
I would support it except for the fact of I testify a lot in court, and if somebody asks me to explain it, I'd like to be able to do that. So I take the more, I guess you want to say, like, anal retentive approach on this, just to make sure we're in the clear. I don't mind expanding it, I just want to make sure we all are on the same page with what the definition is. If you separate out, because the original language is and, which has a different implication, which I'm not even sure what that particular implication is, to tell you the truth. So if we make a change other than outside of statute, then can we define it? And that's all I'm asking.
I just don't know if it belongs in policy or if that's general,
We have a definition here. Do we need to go a little bit farther with the way we're defining or what we did? What does St. Paul do if they do it?
Did we define sexual orientation
No,
and some of the other protected status?
race.
I can look up what the other one was. I don't know if we have time to do that, but
I'm fine with it. I'm just being cautious, that's all.
yeah.
I think, I'd be supportive of the change. I think it's reflective of the resolution that we passed and that we had stakeholder involvement with that. And I think it's more apropos of what's happening in society, in my opinion, but,
just to clarify,
so,
so if we look at right now it says sexual orientation, including gender identity and expression.
Take out
Are we
include.
saying sexual orientation, comma, gender identity, comma, and gender expression?
I would be most comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think that's what we're saying. Does everyone agree with that?
I mean, I think it's fairly straightforward with what each category is. I'm pretty comfortable with that. Is it?
I think it's
Yeah,
more
where are
defining
we
this
not-
way,
Where are we
to be honest.
uncomfortable with it?
I think it's more defining this way, like it's
Yeah.
more
Yeah, it's more
specific.
Yeah.
Minneapolis does provide definitions, but they go through like every word and define it.
Yeah.
So they do them all.
Probably just for that reason.
But I mean, everything, they define disability, they define family structure, they define all of those things, so.
Probably have had it questioned in legal terms. And like I said, I have no problem with it. I just want to make sure that if it ever gets brought up as a difference and something that we violated or a policy, somebody says we, whatever, that we are prepared. And if you guys think we're prepared for that, then, and if our legal counsel doesn't have a problem with it, he just said the statute's fine. Does the statute define gender expression too? No.
No. It doesn't.
Don't they
Part of the
refer-
Minnesota Human Rights Act.
That's
So
what
They
it is.
refer to, something else, I don't know what it is, some definition book on that.
It
don't
does.
they? Yeah,
And you put that in your email. Yeah.
if it does, then, and it's defined in statute, I'm fine. I didn't research it. I don't care if it's expanded or not. I think I agree with Michael and, on it. I just want to make sure that when we go above and beyond statute in a definition, that we're prepared to back it up.
All right. I think we're prepared. Everyone's feeling fairly comfortable? Okay. All right. So that'll come back. As we,
Correct.
Okay.
is that it?
And then there's a similar one above
Oh.
that, we just may want to look at that wording, and it was but it's just that first introduction, so we've got time to talk about
Board
it.
policy review?
In 413, in the new ones that were introduced
Yeah.
tonight, we may just want to look at how harassment, if we want to break it out the same way for harassment. But we've got time on that one.
Oh, where it
Is it
says,
the-
So you look at like harassment under definitions, like B. They list them out. I don't know if that comes from the same protected classes, but they listed out marital status, familial status, regard to public assistance, sexual orientation, or disability.
Just make a separate reference to the other policy? We do that in other places.
That's, 413, it does stipulate, because there are multiple overlapping laws governing the school district's response to allegation of sexual harassment, all allegations of sexual harassment are subject to policy 522.
522, yeah.
So that has been in there to bring, again, that companion policy. So we do have several instances where policies do work together through
Good.
situations.
Okay, thank you for putting extra time into that
No worries.
research.
No worries. All right, thank you.
all right, thank you. Thanks for hanging with us. Okay. Any superintendent relations this evening?
The only thing that I do want to do is I want to publicly acknowledge the tragic passing of David Warner last week. I know that you joined me in supporting Caroline, their daughters Esme and Maya, and David's mother, Gloria Warner, who was a longtime teacher, a very beloved teacher in our district. Dave was a graduate of Prior Lake High School as well. And I just know that, like I said, I wanted to publicly acknowledge that. I know it's been an incredible, difficult blow for our community. And I know Caroline appreciates the support that she has received, and I've promised her she will continue to receive that, as will her girls. There is a service, celebration of life tomorrow at Shepherd of the Lake between 4 and 7 o'clock tomorrow. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Informational items, I don't think we have any tonight, as far as I should probably look, sorry. No, public forum, anybody want to talk at 10:15 at night? So now we're gonna adjourn the study session and go into closed session for discussing the superintendent evaluation, in accordance to the Minnesota statute 13D. Okay, thank you all.